Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
Hey, welcome back. I am at the cottage. I've been here for about 2 months now, and things have been awesome. Just unplugging and trying to just, spend time with friends and have some good food, good wine, looking at the water. I hope you guys get to enjoy the summer as well. Today's guest is Kellan Paniccia, who also has been able to get that financial independence and started off by living for free by purchasing a duplex, living in one unit, renting out the other. But since then, he's amassed 52 doors and he's been able to work with lenders to lend him the money that he needed in order to get to where he is today. And so we talk about his journey. I think it's super interesting if you guys are looking for ways to get creative from a financing standpoint without necessarily having to bring in other partners. This is a great podcast for you. And don't forget to reach out to Kellan at kellanjames.ca. And also enjoy this awesome weather, enjoy your summer, and let me know what you're up to and how you are trying to enjoy the nice weather these days. Kellan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Sarah. I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. It's nice to see you again. I mean, we've talked on and off probably for the last couple years, and you are also very inspirational. You are an active real estate investor. For those of you that may not know, if you wouldn't mind just sharing how you got started in real estate in the first place, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So for me, I was working at my 9-to-5 day job. I worked in the tech world. So I did computer science for my degree. And then I was kind of working for Cisco and a local tech company. And I was like, I don't want to do this forever. I really want financial independence. So I was really getting into like blogs like Mr. Money Mustache and some of these like frugality and like that kind of stuff. And, I really knew that I didn't want to do this forever. I knew I didn't want to do it for the next 30, 40 years. So I was like, at least step one was like figuring out how to maybe retire based on index funds and things like that, right? I mean, even that blew my mind because even with strategies like that, you can retire, a whole lot earlier than the average person. And then after a while I got into real estate and I was like, oh, this can happen a lot faster if I play my cards right. So I lived frugally for some years while I was kind of like just trying to save up and stuff like that. I paid my way through school and I saved up about 120 grand or so just from living cheap in an apartment and just, saving money. And then I ended up buying my first duplex in 2016 in August and lived in one half, rented out the other. I was living for free. And that was a huge springboard toward financial independence from there. So, I did the home buyer's plan on that one, pulled out as much as I could on my RSP. I did 5% down. And then the next properties from there, 20% down, and I was burring from there. So I had some projects along the way where I was getting all of my money out and more. Some of them where I was getting all my money out, some where I was leaving some money in, but overall, always trying to keep up as much momentum as I could. And then fast forward to now, I've built a portfolio of, I had 32 units when I quit the day job a couple of years ago. And then now I'm at 52 units and all solely owned with no joint venture partners. So that's kind of been my favorite way to structure things so far.
Very cool. So you started saving, you built up enough to move essentially into a duplex. House hacking is a great way to start. If anybody's listening to this and they want to get a way to get started, you put 5% down because you're going to go live in it. So there's ways that you can, get that financing. And then you found a way to make the one tenant essentially pay for all of your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, and all that good stuff so you can live for free and keep saving. That is very cool. Congrats on that.
It's the best way to start if you're willing to live in a multi-unit building, or if you're maybe even just like you're younger and you're willing to live with other students, right? Renting out a 5 or 6 bed house, living in a bedroom, amazing way to start. But a duplex or triplex, living in one unit, it's an amazing way to learn how to be a landlord. Very little cost to entry with only 5% down. And it's one of the best springboards that I usually recommend to people.
Very cool. So you started in the end of 2016, correct? So 4 years, 5 years?
Yes. Something like that. Yeah. So it's August of 2016 is when I bought my first.
All right. So you've got 5 years and 50 something properties, and you're doing this with no joint ventures. So that is first of all incredible. So I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
What can you share on how you've been able to acquire all of those with no JV partners? Like, give us like 3 or 4 insights that we can take home.
Yeah, for sure. So I think first off, there was a myth that's been floating around for a while now, and I think it's starting to get shattered a bit. I'm really trying to make it more of a conversation amongst the community that, when you hit 4 or 5 properties, you're not hitting a wall. I mean, you're able to continue acquiring properties from there if you play your cards right. So the idea being keeping your debt service ratios in check. So a lot of banks are going to use something like the 50% rule. So if your properties can meet that rule, you're able to continue acquiring, and more than likely they're going to continue saying yes and approving you for mortgages. So 50% rule is you take the gross rents, divide it by 2, subtract the mortgage payment, and then subtract a little bit for heat and property taxes. If that number is 0, then you're generally going to be good. For most banks, they're going to consider that property to float itself. If it's positive, it'll actually help improve your debt service ratios. And if it's negative, it'll have a negative effect on your debt service ratios. But you can afford to take a few of those before it really offsets your day job income to the point where you can't qualify or can't get approved anymore. So always trying to keep properties in good debt service income or ratios was pivotal to my journey. Otherwise, at some point along the lines, the bank starts saying no, and you're either going to have to sell or bring on equity partners in order to continue qualifying for financing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that 50% rule is really interesting. This is why, cash flow is important. Like, it doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds or thousands of dollars of cash flow,
yeah,
but enough to be able to keep you from, continuing without hitting that wall. So you've got 52. I'm guessing at some point you incorporated along the way, but can you share like some of the lenders, like, and obviously lenders change all the time. So, every month there's going to be new things and different strategies to go about it. But when you first started, can you share like maybe like who you went to first and how you did that, and then who you went to afterwards? And like, because all the lenders will have different criterias, they'll have different ways that they want to, look at portfolios. And so maybe just walk us through that journey when you were doing it. And again, just like if you're listening to this at home, just keep in mind things change all the time. So you're going to have to likely get a different plan. But what was your plan, Kellan?
Yeah, so for most people starting out, I mean, you're going to work with as many A lenders as you can, as early as you can. So for me, I found Scotiabank to be one of the most investor-friendly banks in Canada. So I was working with them. I got my first 10 properties with mostly Scotiabank. I had I had one with RBC because it was a 6-plex, and RBC and Desjardins are one of the only 2 banks that'll finance a 5 or 6 unit building with residential rates and only 20% down. But otherwise, I had one other property, my very first one I actually bought with a random bank through a mortgage broker, but otherwise everything else was with Scotiabank until I got to the 10 property mark. That is a cap if you're working directly with them as of right now. And those rules can change over time. But I mean, it's pretty much been that way for the 4 or 5 years that I've worked with them. And thus far, it doesn't seem like that'll change anytime soon. If you're working with a mortgage broker, there are going to be limits. I mean, they might be more like 4 or 5 or 6. And then at that point, you actually would need to work directly with Scotiabank in order to get past that limit. But otherwise, the first 10, I actually owned them all personally. And actually, to this point, I still own everything personally. And I just started a corporation recently, a 3-tiered structure, because it seemed to work well based on my situation after speaking with my accountant. So some of my acquisitions going forward will likely be in a corporate structure. But that was actually more for tax purposes. I think some people jump into the corporate structure because they're able to find lenders that are a little more likely to loan to you in that scenario. I was able to work with lenders that didn't require that. And I'm still able to continue acquiring personally if I want to.
Can you share some of those lenders after Scotia and RBC?
Yeah, so you can work with, first off, most people are going to go to commercial lenders at that point. They're going to be kind of forced in that scenario, though, to buy 6 units and up. And fantastic if that's the type of buildings you're looking to buy at that point. If you're one of the few people who wants to continue buying 2 to 4 unit buildings after you've built up a property of 10 plus properties, then credit unions are an amazing option for that. So I've been working with credit unions, 25% down, 25-year AM, and the rates are a little bit higher, but not like still like mid 2s kind of thing. Like, they're actually completely reasonable rates. So not as cheap, I'm not getting the 1.5, 1.8 that some people are seeing as of right now, but overall completely reasonable rates, and flexible in terms of, no limit on number of doors. Like, overall, I can continue buying as many as I want, as long as they meet the debt service, the DCR requirements they have, which is like 1.2 or higher. and as long as I have the down payment funds.
Okay, so that's cool. So credit unions. Now, obviously, I'm a big proponent of working with mortgage broker, and many of them, the good ones, have relationships. But in your situation, did you go individually to a few credit unions that you knew or that were in your area, or did you go through a mortgage broker that went through the credit unions? And how did you do that?
Yeah, so I spoke with a bunch of different mortgage brokers because my situation was pretty specific, right? Not a lot of people have no day job and 10 plus properties and they want to continue buying 2 to 4 unit buildings. So I talked to countless mortgage brokers to see what my options were. And there were there were certain lenders that maybe had some options here and there. Some of them, like I did one of them with Home Trust, but the rate was like 6%. And I don't know. I mean, I'm actually in the process of selling a property for the first time ever. And that's a mortgage I have with Home Trust. But otherwise, like, I actually got referred to this credit union from a mortgage broker. At the time, they weren't working with that credit union directly, so they got me connected with them directly. And honestly, I've always preferred. I mean, I think that everyone's situation is different. For some people, working with a mortgage broker is awesome because they're able to go at bat for you. They're able to optimize the numbers in a way that you may not be able to yourself. They're able to, really pitch your situation, your narrative, and get a deal done where you may not have been able to if you work directly with the bank. I've always preferred working directly with, Scotiabank and now credit unions because I know how to optimize my application in a way that they're happy with it. So I actually create spreadsheets, provide all the information they need so that they're able to say, oh, your DCR is right there. It's literally in the spreadsheet you provided. And the underwriter has a whole lot less work to do. And I'm able to get things approved a lot easier when I'm able to, make the pitch myself. And also saves on some fees, right? Lender fees and broker fees. It's kind of nice. And I mean, credit unions, especially, they're about relationships. So, when I applied with this credit union, I wrote they asked me for a bio. They're like, who are you? Tell me your story, whatever. How many banks ask you that, right? They're like, show me your money, show me your bank account. And like, let's pull your credit. They're like, what's your story? So I created a nice bio and put my picture on it and all this stuff. They're actually trying to build relationships. So it's nice when there's one fewer layer of abstraction in that scenario where you're able to work and build that relationship more directly. I always try to have as few layers of abstraction between me and the underwriter as possible, just so I can get hopefully a good feel for exactly what the underwriter is looking for. And then I could just give them exactly what they need and they're happy to continue approving.
That's an awesome story. Now you are doing the BRRRR strategy. So you are, I guess, letting the lender know ahead of time that you're going to be refinancing this so that you can do it with a certain time frame. Is that roughly what you're doing? Or if not, just let me know.
Yeah. So with Scotiabank, it was really important to do that. They're always pretty good about registering the mortgage in the back end a little bit higher with the expectation that you're planning on refinancing. It's really important if you're working with a lender, even if it's Scotiabank or someone that is a bank that's more investor friendly, to tell them your plan is, right? If you're looking to refinance in the coming 3-6 months, they really need to know that. You can save on some lawyer fees and things like that if you register things properly. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's very important to show that plan up front. I've brought some mortgages over since because, once you leave your day job, you're able to renew mortgages with someone like Scotiabank. I don't have a job anymore, but they're still able to renew me. You literally just click renew on Scotiabank's website, and they're happy to do that. They don't pull credit again and make sure you're working and any of that, which is great. But they can't let you access any further appreciation. They can only let you access the mortgage pay down. So I want to access the appreciation that I've forced and the market appreciation. So for me, that means moving it over to a credit union that will let me bring it up to, in my case, 75% loan to value. In order to access that equity. Now, when it comes to buying properties with the credit union, I don't think that they're super pumped about the idea of a quick refi within 3-6 months, like I may have been able to do more in the past. But when you build at that point, you have a pretty significant portfolio. You can look back to a property you bought 1, 2, 3 years ago and pull equity from those. You don't always have to pull it out of the one you just bought.
Exactly. It just gives you options, right? So with 52 units, you definitely can, you don't have to go back to the very, very last one. Yeah.
And the nice thing about it too is that I'm able to do that because it's just myself on all these properties. So if I want to be able to access the equity, I don't need to go to a partner and try and figure out which one makes sense. And maybe they're not ready to drop their cash flow yet, or they don't need the capital right now.
Yeah,
I can just go to whatever makes sense out of the portfolio.
So that brings me into the next point I wanted to ask you about is obviously there are going to be some benefits to not having JV partners as you're scaling your portfolio. I mean, not that there's anything wrong or not wrong. I mean, different people scale different ways and there's pros and cons to both. But in your opinion, can you share some of the, I guess you mentioned one is flexibility, but can you share some of the points where when you were looking at acquiring and continuing, that you said, I'm going to try to do this myself? Why did you go that route? And then, what are the pros and cons for you?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting topic of conversation, because first off, I usually like to talk about the benefits of joint venturing, because there are many. One of the main ones is, like, if you're looking to acquire a lot of properties really quickly, you have endless capital accessible to you at your fingertips if you have built legitimacy amongst social media and amongst the investor community, and you're able to access money through joint venture partners and acquire as many as you want as quickly as you want. So I mean, that's an amazing thing that's a little bit more difficult to do if you're purchasing personally, because now you need to be able to access money and work with banks, and all of this is isn't always as quick as you'd like it to be. But so I really liked the idea of not doing joint ventures in my case, because the way I looked at it was, well, first off, if I'm going to be doing 50% partnerships with people, that means in order to make the same amount of cash flow, mortgage pay down, and appreciation, I'm going to have to do twice as many deals. And in my case, I was okay with doing maybe half as many deals, but owning them myself and having 100% control over them. So I kind of look at it in my head is like, I have the 52 units. Maybe I could have done instead the 104 units with joint venture partners, but I actually would kind of prefer the scenario I have, because I have 100% control over the 52 units I have versus 104 units with partners and complications and relationships that come up there. I mean, there are benefits to both sides, but I really like being able to have that 100% ownership. And one other way I like to look at it is if you're looking to do a BRRRR project and you know that you can get all of your money out or most of your money out in 3 to 6 months, I mean, it may as well be your property after the 3 to 6 months, right? As long as you're able to access the money in order to do the deal and bring it to a bank or private money or whatever it is you need to do to get the deal done. If you're confident in your ability to BRRRR a property, I mean, it may as well be done yourself in the way I look at it. Now, you can only do so many of those at a time, because you're not going to borrow 12% money on millions of dollars and do a whole bunch of deals all at the same time, because that's just a lot of money to float. But I've always had the confidence in myself to be able to get my money back out of these properties. So I've always figured it may as well be if I'm going to put all that effort in, I may as well have 100% ownership when I'm done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, again, like if somebody is going to sit on the sidelines for 5 to 10 years and they're not going to do anything, then partner up with somebody that's going to help you. Or, if you are looking to learn along the way, you can partner with someone that's going to help you. Or if you're looking to borrow somebody else's funds or financing ability. So there's definitely some good things, I think the joint venture piece works. But just like you, Kellan, like, I built my portfolio. Obviously my spouse and myself have done it, and didn't bring in other outside investors. It was strictly ourselves. And then I left my 9-to-5 job. Now I'm open to other things. I'm also working on bigger deals just in general where we're doing some more development and stuff now. However, I will say there is something to be said about having the ability to get, the cash flow, the mortgage pay down, the appreciation. And I don't know, with the portfolio that I have, I would have not been able to do it had I had JVs for everything else, just because, you're not benefiting as much. However, could I have doubled or tripled in half the amount of time? Probably. So there's kind of that balance you got to weigh out.
It's funny, right? Because it's like, well, we could have done maybe twice as many deals, but like, would we have grayer hair by the end of that? And like, managing all the relationships. And also we have to do twice as many deals. Now we have to manage that many as well, or have management take care of that stuff. And like, you want to, say you have a goal of $5,000 before you leave your day job. Now it's got to be a portfolio that cash flows 10 grand a month that you're splitting with a partner. I mean, that's a pretty significant portfolio to build while working a day job, right? That's a pretty difficult thing to do. So, it's really started to add up now, cash flow and mortgage pay down. I'm super grateful that I own 100% of it myself, because it really allows me to, it gives me options in my life that I wouldn't have otherwise if things were split differently.
Yeah, for sure. So what was the big thing for you? I mean, obviously you did this fairly quickly. I mean, we've really been only investing for five years, and you've left your day job after, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Talk to us about like how your life changed from the time that you were, trading your time for dollars versus when you're like, I don't need it to do anymore. I'm where I want to be. And, like, how did that change your life?
Yeah. So So first off, I was super pumped. Like my plan was to leave the day job. My plan was to quit. And I was like, in 2 weeks, I'm going to give my notice at my day job. I'm going to go talk to the boss. I was really scared to do it because golden handcuffs and all that. But I knew now was the time. I mean, I had more than enough. I'd made more of my cash flow than I made in my day job. So I was like, now's the time. So I was like ready to give the notice, and then I got laid off from my day job. So it was completely perfect timing.
Nice.
So, yeah, so I got all the benefits that come with getting laid off instead of getting fired or quitting. And then my girlfriend and I were planning on doing a van trip around the USA, living in a Sprinter van. And she ended up getting laid off from her job as well. She was planning on asking for unpaid leave. She's actually building a portfolio of her own on the side right now. It's completely separate from mine. She's got a portfolio of 19 units over 7 properties, building cash flow on her own. And she and I are kind of having our finances separated in that way, or our portfolio separated in that way. But so the plan was, her to go with unpaid leave, me to quit the job. I ended up getting laid off. She got laid off. We left on a 3-month van trip around the USA. We lived in a van with the dog. We did 30,000 kilometers. We saw, I don't know how many, 20 plus national parks and 30 something states. And, we just had an amazing summer in 2019, which is perfect timing because we saw the US in a way that we would not be able to see right now. And then we got back. And I spent a good amount of time just dealing with deferred maintenance in the year after I left my day job. So I was just dealing with, I'd acquired a lot of properties really quickly and I didn't get 100% turnover on all of them. So I was dealing with a ton of deferred maintenance, finally getting some turnover, renovating those units. A lot of times my cash flow was jumping up by $400 or $500 every time a unit turned over. So I was pretty pumped about that. And I didn't think, well, it's not really a huge rush to buy more. So I actually went about a year and maybe about 2 units in a year or something. Not like I didn't really do much. And finally I got things kind of settled. And last year in 2020, I bought 20 units in 2020 and started focusing on more like 6 plexes and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's what life's kind of looked like since I left the day job. And now it's really trying to figure out, now we get to have all these conversations, I'm sure you have as well, of like, what else is there to life, right? Like once you start making real money and you don't have the job anymore, now it's like, okay, now what do I want to do? And that's a deep question. And it's something I think we're always exploring on a daily basis, trying to figure out, are we doing what we want to do? Because we don't have to do anything if we don't want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. And I think part of it too is there's motivation and there is inspiration and there is productivity that likely I'm sure you're like me in a way, we can't just stop, right? So like when I left in October, I was like, I don't want to just do nothing. Like, yes, I don't have that 9 to 5 or 40, 50 hours a week of like working for someone else and building somebody else's wealth. I can now do it for myself. But I think that retirement, quote unquote, word is not 100% accurate when you're talking to maybe investors that have built it, because it's not like all of a sudden we're going to turn around and be like, I'm going to like hang out at the beach the whole time. Because to me, that'd be fun for a few weeks. And then it gets really boring really fast. Then you're like, okay, what's next? And you always want to do something. So it's just now what's next is up to us. The time that we want to invest in it is up to us. And so we just have more control over it.
Yeah. And this is something I'm trying to get people to think more about. Like sometimes this happens faster than we expect, right? It's like, oh, now I'm able to leave my job. Okay. Like what else is there to life? And there is still a bit of a timeline, right? If you're looking to build like start a family and things like that, there's maybe a chunk of your life where it's like, now's a great time to travel or now's like whatever, right? So it's really hard to figure out it's an awesome problem to have, but it's something to really prepare yourself for, right? If your goal is to reach financial independence, it's really important to figure out what along your way is part of the process you enjoy. What is the journey that you enjoy? And then when you're ready to leave the job and you have all this free time, you can really figure out what it is you want to be doing with it. Something I'm talking about a little bit more recently, maybe a bit of a niche topic, is just like the golden handcuffs of entrepreneurship. When you figure out how to make money, it's really hard to stop because you're like, I can make more this year than I've ever made in my life because, of course, we know more than we ever did. We have the strategies to do that. So, like say, for example, you're like, I can make $1 million this year if I want, right? I know how to do that. I do the right deals. I make the right business, whatever. Okay. Is that what you want to spend your year doing? Because really that's the question it comes down to, right? It's a very interesting topic that I don't hear a lot of people talking about right now, but I see a lot of people working their asses off and they don't have to be.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing I would just say, and I think I was lucky with this, but if you are, I mean, you're what, 20, you're what, 30, 29,
30.
how old are you? 30. Okay. So you're 30, you know, I'm going on 37, and there is not, unless they're investors or entrepreneurs, you know, you look back at like some of your university friends or the friends that you had at your JOB world, they are still working. So I'll tell you, you know, what has helped me is in the last, you know, 4 years or so, I've developed some great friends in, you know, the investing world, and they are also, you know, entrepreneurs and doing their own hours, because now we can have brunch on a random Wednesday, or we can have like a girls' cottage weekend on a Thursday or Wednesday or Tuesday. It doesn't even have to be a weekend anymore. So I think that part helps, because if you're going and then all of a sudden you stop and you AKA retire, well, hopefully the people around you are going to be in a similar position to be able to have that time freedom as well. Otherwise, you're going to be bored pretty damn quick, in my opinion, right? So I don't know how your situation was. I mean, if like, I think you're pretty, like, you know, you're in the community, you've got connections, but how was it for you though, when you did leave and, you know, with your friends?
So almost all of my friends are real estate investors now, because or entrepreneurs of some sort, because I mean, you can like everyone else is working during the day, so you got to hang out with people. I mean, tough with COVID, but like you want to be able to spend time with people. So I mean, I started basically only hanging out with other real estate investors. I mean, it's a social challenge in that, like, you have a hard time relating to other people because you don't feel comfortable talking about what's going on in your business or your successes, because it feels like you're bragging. But there's people in your life that are, if they're entrepreneurs and other real estate investors and stuff, they're actually excited for you, right? Like, they're inspired by what you're doing. You're inspired by what they're doing. So absolutely. I mean, all of my friends are real estate investors. I think it's really important to surround yourself. I mean, not necessarily build a bubble, but just surround yourself with people that, you know, are cheering you on and are excited for what you're doing. And then, of course, having that flexibility in your schedule is amazing. Being able to, you know, even be able to fly places and leave on a Wednesday. I mean, you get all the cheap flights and you get like fewer people in the airports, and there's a lot of benefits to having free time in your schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think at the end of the day, like you said, some people can get there a lot faster, you know, and some people it's going to take 10 years. But I do want to say that this is not something, I mean, you did it really quickly. I mean, my journey took 7 years, but this is not a get rich quick piece. And it's definitely not a doing it by yourself thing either. Like, you know, you build a team, you build connections, you build, I think, relationships with other investors, and you bounce off some ideas. And like you said it, like you inspire each other, you push each other to get to new levels. So I think, you know, all of that is pretty awesome. But I will go back and I will say, I mean, you know, this is not overnight. This is not an overnight get rich quick type of thing. This is get rich slowly. However, I think real estate in 10 years, you know, like, plus long-term wise, like, you can't really lose a ton of money as long as your property's cash flow and you're in it for the long run, obviously.
I think that most of the successful investors I know are looking at this as a long-term thing. I mean, of course, we've ended up in the last couple of years have some insane appreciation that we weren't, you know, we were looking at the cherry on top, and now it's turned out to be like a huge cake, right? but yeah, no, absolutely. Like, long-term investors, the people who are looking at it as like, you know, this doesn't, maybe the first year it doesn't cash flow. That's fine, right? There's a lot of people who think, it's not cash flowing this month and stuff. Like, successful investors don't look at their properties that way. Like, they're looking at the big picture. They're looking at the long term. So I think that's super important.
And sometimes when you look at deals, like, let's just say you burr something and you've got $150 cash flow a month, like, you know, not great, it's cash flowing. And, you know, obviously you don't just calculate your mortgage insurance taxes. Like, you've got to add your maintenance, your vacancy allowance, and your CapEx and stuff like that. But let's just say it's $150 a month. Here's the good nice thing. If you screen your tenants properly and you make sure that they're not going to be lifers, at some point you're resetting back to market rent, as long as the NDP doesn't come into power and switch everything over. But right now, you know, the tenants leave, and then all of a sudden you reset back to market rent, and your $150 could be $500, could be $700. And then you start doing this with multiple properties over time. At some point, and I think, like, for me, it was probably 4 years until, like, I felt like my life actually changed as you have the refinance, as you have the tenants turnover and all that kind of stuff. That's what it felt like the first 4 years, it felt like a grind, like crazy grind. And then afterwards you're like, shit, man, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, because we're cash poor during this process, right? That's the life of a burr investor. I mean, you never have money. Like if you do, you buy another property, right? So yeah, no, totally. That's the experience for me, and it's been for any of my friends or anyone I've mentored or anyone any successful investor I've spoken to. They're always cash poor, and then at some point, maybe they decide, all right, now I've kind of deferred my gratitude a little bit, like enough, and now deferred my whatever happiness a little, and now it's time to enjoy life a little bit, and maybe kind of mix things up. You're going to continue building, but at the same time enjoy your life and try and find that balance. And another thing I wanted to mention is like, you talk about, building that community and relationships and stuff like that. I mean, that's so important to me. I mentioned the idea that I'm, investing solo, but by no means am I alone, right? Like
right.
I'm connected to as many people as I can. I'm always, like we've been connected for years. Like we started London on Fire, like local meetup groups. We do the podcast. We're like, always trying to put ourselves out there and try and get connected with more people. So I think that like solo by no means do it yourself. It just means maybe you own the properties yourself, but you're constantly dealing with other people and you're building relationships, because there's a ton of value in networking and getting connected with people and learning from them.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not in this alone. So
No.
if I could ask, like, for one thing that you're like, I regret doing this, or like one like thing that you would change going back in your journey. It could be anything at all. Like,
Yeah.
what would that be?
I struggle with this question, but I one thing that just pops into my mind is like my first property, I did 5% down, which I was pumped. I'm happy I did that. But I think I probably would have done a 5% down and a purchase plus improvements on it and kind of did that combo. And maybe even taken advantage of another program where you can actually get up to 25% of your CMHC or Genworth fee back if you're doing energy grants. So you can couple that with the actual energy audits and energy grants, like through Enbridge and Union Gas and that kind of stuff. I mean, those programs coupled together is one of the best ways to start. It's usually what I suggest to people now. So yeah, I would have done 5% down, purchase plus improvements. I would have done the energy audits, and I would have applied to get a portion of my CMHC feedback. I think like at the end of the day, otherwise I'm pretty happy with the process that I followed. I knew that like when I started networking originally, I mean, when I first got into things, I listened to 100 Bigger Pockets episodes, and then I started like meeting up with local people, and I got connected and tried building community. So I'm really happy with how I did that. But one thing I learned from all these people I spoke with was, even in 2016, I wish I had bought more properties faster. And I mean, it's like, cool, like I'm going to do that then. I mean, that seems like the resounding answer that everyone says, like, what do you wish you had done? And it's, I wish I had bought more faster. And I think that's probably still going to be the case in 5 years. So, yeah, that's one thing. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have bought more any faster than I did. I definitely, was at a tipping point at certain moments where it was like a lot, right? So juggling 10 properties in the day job was enough.
Yeah. And sometimes as you're learning, it's like almost like what you know now, you didn't know before. So you're able to
Yes.
faster going back to it. But I think this brings me to my next piece. I think you're doing some mentorship, or you're doing some coaching to help people scale up. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so recently I started doing a mentorship program. It's like a 12-month program, and the idea is for me to be able to share with people what I did and help them do the same. So it's all about helping people with burring properties in Southern Ontario and building up a portfolio of cash flowing properties. So I mean, it's something I've been really passionate about recently. Honestly, that's what's taking up the vast majority of my time these days. I do still self-manage all my properties actually, but the vast majority of my time is now just kind of getting more connected with people and really getting one-on-one specific actionable advice to people and helping them build a portfolio so that they can leave their jobs as well. And I mean, I've done this in the past informally with people, and they've left their jobs or they're well on their way now. So I was just like, I kind of want to formalize this and make this a thing where I can really help people do that. So it's
Awesome.
something I'm focused on a lot more now.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, it is fun right now that we both have
It
more time to be able to give back. That is very cool. So
Yeah.
where can people find out more information about that?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, kellanjames.ca. I'm on Instagram is where I'm posting most of my content. So Kellan James on Instagram. You can add me on Facebook, and I have a YouTube channel as well, Kellan James on there. I did a video I've only done a few videos, but I'm gonna be posting more. I did one on like how I screen tenants, how to find off-market deals, and just some burr projects I've worked on.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. So the next part, Kellan, of the podcast is the lightning round. I'm going to ask you a series of 5 questions. You're going to give me the first answer that comes to mind. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Question number 1, what is your favorite real estate investing book?
I honestly don't like a lot of real estate. Well, I mean, we have Mark Loeffler's book back there, so it's kind of in the background. But I'm not. Honestly, books aren't really the go-to place I do for real estate investing. I think it's all about podcasts and YouTube and just networking directly with people. I really like certain business books. I like Extreme Ownership is really great. Never Split the Difference, The 4-Hour Work Week, Rich Dad Poor Dad, probably answers that everyone else has given in the past on this podcast.
all great books. So number 2, then I know you mentioned podcasts, and this doesn't necessarily have to be a real estate investing podcast, but do you have a favorite podcast in general?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have a favorite. I mean, actually, Bigger Pockets just holds a place in my heart because like that's where I started. So Bigger Pockets, there's your podcast, of course, Andrew Hines podcast, the Rise Investing podcast. I have my own podcast called the On Fire podcast with Matt McKeever. So just listen to all of it, right? I mean, Sarah Larby was a guest on the On Fire podcast super early, so you got to go back and listen to that episode. It'd probably be a blast from the past, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. That was like what, 3 years ago?
Probably something like that. So I think that'd be super cool to go back and listen to.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. Question number 3. What do you do for fun aside from real estate?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love backpacking in Algonquin and just like backcountry camping and portaging. I haven't been doing much of that recently. So I'm really trying to get a lot more of this in my life. Yeah, just mainly for me is like board games and playing and having social time with friends and like video games and stuff like that. That's what I love to do.
All right. Very cool. Question number 4. If you lost all of your assets, your money tomorrow, how would you start again?
If I had no money, I mean, it actually may make a lot of sense to joint venture partner at that point. Maybe at that point, I would first see if I could find some private money from friends or family. If they know that if they still see that I'm competent or somehow know that I'm competent, I would show that I'm competent and I would explain that I know how I'm going to do a deal. I would try and borrow money from them at a reasonable interest rate, use that for down payment on a property, and continue borrowing from there. I would probably try and rinse and repeat a similar process.
All right. Very cool. And last question, if somebody has $50,000 and they want to get started, how would you recommend they spend their money? So a lot of people like to try and invest in the city they're living in. If you're lucky enough to live in a city that works for investor friendly, like for investors and cash flow, great. But otherwise, you're probably going to try and take that 50 grand and find a market where it's going to be enough to get you at least the down payment. Maybe you use the line of credit funds for the renovations and then try and refinance your money out from there. If your 50 grand is not enough for your market, you got to try a different market or you got to try a different strategy. All right. Awesome. Thanks for playing the lightning round, Kellan. Where can the listeners, I know you mentioned a little bit, but where can the listeners reach out? What's the best place to get to connect with you?
Yeah, shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm still replying to all of those. So feel free to do that. If you guys are listening to this episode, you can take a screenshot and tag Sarah and I in it. And I'm sure we'll probably reshare it. So Instagram, my website, kellanjames.ca, and YouTube as well.
Awesome. And I always ask this at the end, any final last words of advice?
I would say just keep up momentum, right? Like you don't want to just buy a property and have no money left when you're done. So, always try and get some of your money back out of that deal, whether that's through, cash back on closing, a purchase plus improvements mortgage, a cash out refinance, whatever you can do to try and keep up momentum.
Awesome. Thanks, Kellan, for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larby. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?